Councilor Manley.
That is on page 28.
It's actually 29.
Oh, is it 29? Thank you. I think that I did my best within the constraints of the process, the budget process, to ask for $25,000 for the Conservation Commission. The public hearing, we had several folks speak to that. Part of what's happening in the Conservation Commission is that we have more requests for our monies to conserve land, to protect our land, to put land under easement. And on the other hand, we have land coming out of current use getting smaller and smaller. So this year, we just found out, because it's a budget year, not a fiscal year, makes it even more confusing, that we're getting $4,190. So this was kind of a compromise to ask for $15,000 more. I think that it was, I get very confused here, but I think the following year it is in the fiscal policies that we would like to give $25,000. So this is just this year's request to help us for this year until we get to what's already passed for next year. If I understand that correctly, and if I don't, someone can correct me.
Further comments? Councilor Richards.
Just a question. This goes to the Conservation Commission the same way the tax use
That's right.
switches, and what do they have in there now, and what do they usually have?
As I understand it, and Councilor Greenwald can correct me, but as I understand it, the recommendation that the Finance Committee made is that the fiscal policy be amended starting next year so that they will receive a minimum of $25,000 from the land use change tax. And if the land use change tax is inadequate, then we will make up the difference. That doesn't provide anything for this year. This year, they were only going to get $4,190. So as I understand the motion is to give them an additional $15,000 so that the transition year before the fiscal policy change takes place, they would have $19,190 to apply. And where it becomes important may be around the West Street Dam area. Councilor Chadbourne.
Thank you. If I missed it, forgive me, but where are we proposing to take this money from within the budget to give to that line item?
I'm going to defer to the city manager.
City manager.
I'm assuming that you would want to do the same thing that we just did with the other items, which would be to take a portion of whatever is available through this year that might have otherwise gone to the bottom line, if you will, of the budget to be used in next year's budget. So you'll be reducing the amount of money available next year to buy down the cost of next year's budget.
Correct.
Councilor Fileault.
If we're finding monies in the budget, how about if we return it back to the taxpayers?
Councilor Hague.
Thank you. If I may, a question for the city manager. Would the revenue stream for this fund be coming directly from the land use change tax fund? No,
it wouldn't. It would come from the bottom line of the budget.
Thank you. The reason I ask is just that the land use change tax revenue varies from year to year, as I understand it. So it could be possible that we would intake some revenue this year or subsequent years that could perhaps pay back to this expense. Is that a fair representation?
We tell that it's
The city manager. I thought you were waiting for me to say something. I'm saying, I don't know.
No, I was looking to you for the information.
Sorry about that.
All right, so with all of that just took place, I hope I have the question right. So the question was the land use change tax, and what portion of the $25,000 prospectively with the land use change tax. So if we looked at the past history of land use change tax, we see that some years, particularly a number of years ago, there was more than adequate amount of money then to make up this amount of money, this $25,000. Actually, it was even more than that. And the formula was to share 50% up to $100,000 with an aggregate of $500,000 ever being collected and put into this particular account. So even now, as we look at the land use change tax, it buys down a portion of the cost to the extent that if it equals $25,000, as I think it's been said here a moment ago, which it won't this year, it would be the amount that the city would put in to make up the balance could be zero, or it could be the entire $25,000, depending upon the amount of land use change tax. Is that the question you were asking?
Yes, that was the question. Thank you for clarifying.
Okay, Councilor Greenwald.
As I'm trying to digest this and see how I feel, it's not like we're expending this money. It's that we're taking from the general fund and putting it into the Conservation Commission account. We still have to vote when that money is expended. Is that correct?
That's my understanding, yes. Conservation Commission doesn't have the independent authority to spend that money. They have to go back to the council. Councilor Richards, City Manager, please.
Well, I suppose that the city manager would have the authority to spend, because I already have that authority to, relative to a certain amount of money relative to small contracts. However, if the background notes reflect that the city council, with respect to the use of this money, wanted to hear the request and pass on it, I would certainly honor that direction if the city council gave me that direction. In other words, I would not authorize any expenditures with my authority absent the matter going to the council for further direction and guidance.
Councilor Richards.
Yeah, I'm actually starting to have an issue with how we're budgeting this. At first, we increased 18,000, we say, well, we can find it. Now it's 15,000, we're saying we can find it. I think it's a little disingenuous. If we're going to increase these centers, we should say we're going to increase those centers, and stand up and say we increase the budget. I can appreciate, okay, when we're saying it's a few $1,000s, and we're going to find that because the employee's going to know things, but if there's another motion and it's for another 10,000, I think as a matter of kind of playing on the straight and narrow, we've increased the budget by that last vote. If we vote for this, we're increasing that line out by the vote. I think that's the way we have to do it.
City Manager.
I think Councilor Fileault's comments earlier were accurate. It does go to the bottom line eventually. It does go to the taxpayer eventually. It just means the following year, there's less money to offset the cost of the operations. So in the end, it does go to the taxpayer. It's just that you're able to absorb it this year. But by the amount that you absorb it, it reduces the amount available next year to offset taxes. So it's really the same thing.
Councilor Hague.
Thank you, Your Honor. I just wanted to add, I'm inclined to support this amendment as a former Conservation Commission member. I think that these funds have always been extremely well spent and provided a lot of good in our city here. And I wanted to point out to my fellow councilors that this is the only expenditure in our budget that has the opportunity to have a permanent effect. When we expend money to acquire conservation lands, whether it's through assisting transaction costs or outright purchase of land like we did on North Lincoln Street, that is a permanent impact. So yes, it's additional money, but it has an impact that is much longer lasting than any other funds that we're voting on today.
Councilor Richards.
Yeah, I'm going to come back on that. But I'm going to agree with Councilor Hague very much. She's dead right. I mean, when we buy conservation land, we're doing something that's forever for the city, and I totally support that. long after we're gone, there's still gonna be these nice places for people to go. I don't know if I articulated myself correctly. What if somebody says they wanna increase the budget by $50,000 and we go for it? I don't think that's going to happen, but I also don't think that we can say, well, we'll find the money. I think the motions are made to increase these line items. We have to increase those line items. I'm gonna support this, but I think we need to increase that line item. And if next year, well, if we have employees that go away and we collect money, that'll happen. But I just, I hate to say this, I've never said this, but in all my years on council, we've never done it this way. We've always increased the budget on the line items or decreased it, and it's just straight above board. I think we have to do that.
With all due respect, this is nuts. I mean, why have a budget? We all have, geez, we really need it here. I can go in, as a former firefighter, I can go in here and tell you, there's some life safety issues in here that need to be had. I can do a nice tear-jerking presentation on that too, and I'd be right, that they do need more life-saving equipment over there. But it's not in the budget because they've cut the budget back because they can't afford it. So where does it stop? We can go through this budget virtually line item for line item again, and we can justify an expense to virtually every line item in this budget if we want it. And we wouldn't be lying. It'd be justified. Where does it stop? 10,000, 6,000, 15,000, 20,000? I mean, what's next? This is nuts.
Thank you, Your Honor. I agree, I guess, more with Councilor Richards than Councilor Fileault's comments, but there is a degree of risk, let's be honest, in doing it this way. But there is precedence. I can remember when the roundabout was, it wasn't a budget issue per se, but when the main Marlboro-Winchester roundabout was built, there was money borrowed from, I believe it was the solid waste fund, yes, and paid back so that we could buy down the cost and not pass so much on to the taxpayers. We're talking about $25,000 total if this motion passes. To me, that passes a straight face test. $50,000, I would start to think a little more. $100,000, I would definitely don't think I would support that. $1 million for something that comes out of nowhere, that would be nuts. But I think as a legislative body, we had a vote, and we're going to have a vote on this issue. We decide, and we suffer the slings and arrows, or praise, or a combination